One of the things that you can do in May and June is get your cameras out and try to obtain some fawn crop photos of when those fawns are being born. And it's not necessarily to say, yeah, those are getting bred, the first 2 weeks of November, like we get it, right? But if you're able to catch an early born fawn and then backdate that 201 days, the gestation period of a whitetail, you could see that doe was bred early in October, or vice versa. If it's, if you get a late born fawn running, into June, the end of June, maybe even July, then that doe was bred late. So there's some things that you can learn from your fawn crop in May, June, and July.
Lights, camera,
follow the trail.
ready to shoot.
If you know where a deer's bedding and you know where he's eating, that deer should be dead.
Camera.
If you're passive on a deer, what you're doing is you're teaching them.
I've got 30 bucks in the Michigan record book. Everyone but one has had at least one previous wound on his body. Some had as many as 4.
The Exodus Podcast,
Your source for all things whitetail.
Chad, welcome back to the Exodus Podcast. You're a stranger around here.
Feels good to be a stranger every once in a while.
Yep, I had to get into your booking agency. I had to talk to your agent to get you on here, but after pulling some fingers, pulling some favors. Here you are.
Well, it's good to be back.
Good, glad to have you. Glad to have you. How has things been?
Just been things have been good, man. Office is good. HQ is good. Turkey season's off to a fairly good start, I guess. It's funny. The last 4 or 5 years, I think I've complained that the season has ended too fast, as in like killing a bird the first day or the second day. And now here we are 7 days in, and I can't find a bird to work to save my life. So that's what I get for complaining about the good.
That is the interesting thing about turkey season, is like when it does happen off the rip, you're like, man, I kind of feel like I cheated myself. And then when it's not going well, you're like, it's just a dumb bird. Why is this being so challenging?
Man, Ohio's split into 2 different zones. You get the southern zone, and then there's like 4 counties in the northeast part of the state that come in a week later. So I took Tony Sangelosi out in the southern zone, the opening, I think it was the first Monday of season. Took him to my private public land spot, and called a bird in, got him killed. And then I've struggled for the last couple, I don't know, I guess for a week. I've been out 4 times, and I have not heard a bird gobble in Trumbull or Ashtabula County. And I'm in turkeys. Like, I went out this morning and listened, saw 2 hens, just can't find a tom.
So
struggling a little bit.
How much more time do you have? Your guys' season runs, I guess it's already May. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, no, we just opened up here on the 29th, so we're a week in. So there's time. It's just a matter of, going before work. You have 2 hours every morning or whatever, trying to find one, because I'm not taking any more time off, really. So
yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think I spent a cumulative hour turkey hunting this year. I just had a lot, man. There's a priority list of things to get done, and I knew going into the spring turkeys were not number one, which I'm totally fine with. I planted a bunch of trees, been doing a pile of work at the farm here, which I thoroughly enjoy. So couple times where I'm working, I hear couple off in the distance, and it does irk me a little bit. It's like I should be chasing those darn things, but just want to get trees in the ground and get some projects done, because there's only so much time to get things done. And it was just lower on the priority list. Yeah.
And you guys have such a screwed up season. The seasons are a week dumb. Long, and there's like 10 of them, and you have to have a certain tag for a certain week. Yeah. It's just like, that's, if you don't get the right weather, or like you said, if your priorities don't match up that week that you have a tag for, it's like you're kind of out of luck.
Yeah, for sure. And I do think turkey numbers are drastically down throughout this area too. Like at my house, there's some birds, but it's not an abundance level of birds where I want to go shoot one just to shoot one to say, oh, I shot a turkey this year, because I really do think that their population is struggling here a little bit. Getting a lot more bobcats on camera. That used to be such a weird thing. And now getting more and more bobcats throughout the area. And then obviously there's about 1,000 raccoons running around. I can't remember who I was talking to. This is pretty cool. Since trapping is not popular anymore, what some of these townships and stuff would do is they would raise money. And then if you brought in a coontail, there was a bounty for like $5 or $10. And so they did that, and they went all the farmers and everyone else. And let's say they raised $1,000 at $5 a raccoon, then they could help eradicate some of those raccoons, which I think is a pretty cool idea. Be interesting if there would be a way to organize that on a larger scale, because they're just everywhere.
Do you think the population's due to predators, or do you think it's loss of habitat? Because I have I was talking to a biologist about this a couple of weeks ago, and he had a pretty interesting perspective on that.
I would assume both. Around here, there's very little quality nesting habitat right now. There will be in a couple of years because I planted a bunch of it. But if you look to like, okay, in this block, where's a turkey going to want to nest? And then you start Xing off everything where would likely not be. There's just not a lot of good habitat for that. But what the biologists share?
Basically the same thing. I was talking to him a few weeks ago, and that topic came up, and he was getting a little bit irritated about everybody talking about predator control. And his point was like, listen, these things have been on Earth for hundreds of thousands of years. They've evolved over time, escaping predators. Like that's their natural. And to your point, his point was he felt like the population decrease here in Ohio is more about loss of habitat than it is an increase of predator populations.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Well, I think in the 80s when trapping, 70s, 80s, and before that when trapping was really popular, there wasn't a ton of turkeys then. I mean, obviously the NWTF did do a good job of increasing that population, but maybe the general person, myself included, is looking at that wrong. But I'm putting nesting habitat because that was one of the things that's just like there's not a really good place around here to where turkey could call. So deer first, but turkeys are kind of they're going to benefit from it as well.
Yeah.
But
how are those projects coming? I know you've been planting trees and stuff, but you were planting a bunch of switchgrass and stuff too.
Yeah. So I planted the rest of my warm season grasses yesterday, and right now I'm in the learning phase. I'm not here to preach to anyone how to do this, but planted just under 500 conifers. I fenced them all off completely. And so it was like 130 yards by 30 yards. Fenced them off completely so they don't get browsed. The white pines don't get browsed and the cedars don't get beat up. And so I did that. And then I planted a lot of trees and shrubs, and I tubed all of them because I've talked to too many people that plant them and then they just get ate to the ground. So I planted a ton of trees and then planted a variety of warm season grasses. I have some buffer strips of switchgrass, which I may end up broadcasting some of that into the fall and do more prep work on some of the screens just because of it's already May. And then, so yeah, a lot of different stuff. So that 10 acres behind there is getting completely revamped, every bit of it. And it already looks way different than when I first bought it 2 years ago. And it's getting there. It's getting there slowly.
That's good. Awesome.
Been really fun. I'm really eager to see what it looks like. Very eager to see, because of course I had to do it kind of the dumb way or my way, I would say. I could have used a tree planter and just done rows all the way down. I would have got done in a day. But I was like, I don't want just row going down the field. So I went in like literally planted a forest hand by hand, and 9 out of 10 people I talked to about that are like, why'd you do that? And it's like, it's just my gut feeling. And we're going to see if it's going to make a difference or not. Cause you try Googling or you talk to other people, you get a bunch of different opinions. I'm missing the phase of my life where I'm trying to learn as fast as possible. And if I can flatten the learning curve, great. But if not, I got to learn for myself.
There's something to be said about the aesthetics of that too. Like when you're on a property and there's just rows and strips of perfectly planted trees versus something that happened by nature where it's more sporadic. Yeah. To me, like there's something to my eye and in my gut that makes me feel good about having something that looks like it's natural versus man-made.
Yeah. So I'll be really curious. We planted pockets of shrubs, pockets of hardwoods, mixed in some sycamores and walnuts together to hopefully make those guys grow straight. And, just it's a cobbled masterpiece back there. I shouldn't call it a masterpiece yet, but we'll see in 5 years.
That's cool.
But, yeah. Planted 20 fruit trees as well. So I'm excited to get those in the ground. Planted those. And so it's about every waking free moment I've been out back working.
What kind of fruit trees did you put in?
Some Kiefer pears and some black Arkansas apple trees.
We just planted some apple trees at home too.
What'd you go with?
We have some pear trees on the property, and what type I don't know. But we planted Golden Delicious and whatever was recommended for cross pollination. I can't remember what the other tree was, but we only planted four of them. So
Gotcha.
not like a bunch. We just planted them in the yard there.
Yeah, that's fun. That'll be cool to see them grow up over time.
Yeah.
But this spring quickly just kind of flew by here, but it's May, and let's talk about some tips that may be on the top of your mind for people maybe getting some cameras out, or just something for them to remember as they put them out here a little bit later.
Yeah. I think oftentimes, man, May/June, guys are like on the fence about putting cameras out because they don't think there's any tangible information to gain. Like guys that have a lot of cameras are still running some cameras in May, right? Just because they have them around, they want to get pictures of deer, whether it's a hobby or whatever, just pure enjoyment, I guess. But I was browsing through some of our older YouTube content, and we did a video a year or two ago about running cameras on new parcels. So like, for instance, someone just got a parcel or got access to a parcel this spring. They have no historical information on the deer hunting side of that come fall. And one of the things that you can do in May and June is get your cameras out and try to obtain some fawn crop photos of when those fawns are being born. And it's not necessarily to say, yeah, those are getting bred, the first 2 weeks of November, like we get it, right? But if you're able to catch an early born fawn and then backdate that 201 days, the gestation period of whitetail, you could see that doe was bred early in October, or vice versa. If it's, if you get a late born fawn running, into June, the end of June, maybe even July, then that doe was bred late. So there's some things that you can learn from your fawn crop in May, June, and July that can give you some insight going into fall, which a lot of guys, including myself, even I should say some folks overlook that. And I think this first clicked for me. Oh, I don't know. I would probably say 4, 5, 6 years ago in an area that I was hunting on public, that I used to get a buck flurry of activity in January, like the first, I guess the tail end of December into January, and never put 2 and 2 together. And then the following year, I just noticed observations and trail camera photos of spikes, right? And I still didn't put it together until the following spring that buck flurry that we were seeing, that buck activity that we were seeing late December, early January, was because yearlings were coming into heat or coming into estrus, being bred. And that's what, like, those visual observations we were seeing of spikes was because of that. Because those does were being bred, late born fawns turning into spikes their first antler season. So I think there are some conclusions you could draw from running trail cameras in May and June. I think that's a big one. That's a really important one for sure.
It is.
To either anticipate something in the upcoming year or reaffirm what you saw last year. And then the other thing too is, if there's a buck right now that has ginormous bases and he's hitting a community scrape where a giant hit last year. I had this happen like a week or two ago. Okay, he lived. I got a pretty good idea who that is, more than likely. And so then you can kind of formulate a plan, or at least have a little bit more enthusiasm in your step of like, okay, he's alive. It's time to really get serious, rather than June or July and you're like, oh yeah, there he is. And then you lost 2 months.
Yeah, I think it is the enthusiasm aspect to it too. Like, you get a photo of giant bases and you're like, he's there. Man, I got 2 months to really dial things in. Maybe it's with my bow, maybe it's with my gear before I get serious about, summer trail camera tactics. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, for sure. And another one noted here was using your phone to help align. So the Rival, that one does not have a screen. So what's a hot tip to use that and make sure, obviously you can check the app to make sure where it's shooting, but let's say you just kind of wanted a quick and easy tool to figure that out.
Yeah, if you have your cell phone with you, just turn your phone, or turn your camera on your phone, turn it into selfie mode, and then just kind of align your phone over the lens of the camera. And this will work with any camera that doesn't have a viewer or any kind of aiming device. Go ahead and overlay your phone over top of the lens of that camera, and you can kind of see what the center shot is of that camera. It's not going to be the exact same field of view with your camera versus your phone, but it'll give you an idea of, how that thing's angled or how it's, what it's seeing, what the camera is seeing, essentially, the trail camera.
Mm-hmm.
And then obviously you could do a couple test photos to see how they're coming through the app, but in just 30 seconds or so, if you flip your phone into selfie mode, line that thing up, it's a pretty convenient tool to help get your cameras lined up.
Yeah. Or if you have some trucks laying around too, that works great for that. But we posted for some Q&A questions. We got a handful of different questions to dive through here today. And you ready just to jump right into some of these?
Yeah, let's do it.
Alrighty. I'm probably not going to announce names because I'm going to botch most of them. So this is out of respect. This is out of respect. If you send a question in, thank you. But let's go ahead and run through some of these ones. Hunting and habitat management strategies for super small parcels, 15 acres and less. Do you have much experience with those real small? You're a big woods guy. You like the vastness, and I'm probably on the other end of the spectrum.
Yeah, I don't have a bunch of experience on smaller pieces. I mean, we hunt some of them, but nothing on the habitat conservation side.
Yeah, I would just say I have hunted a lot of really small parcels, and I've actually had some good success on them as well. And I think you just have to realize how much more delicate a small parcel is. And that means what you do to it and what the surrounding area, what's going on with that too. Because, let's say it's 15 acres or less and it's butt up to, I don't know, there's like 4 different 40s that are touching it and everyone else is hunting it pretty heavily. Well, if you stay out of it, ideally the deer are going to spend more time onto there. But the other thing too is I think people always, all the farms I walk, this is kind of a synonymous thing, which is kind of funny. There's always a stand on the very, very, very back part of the farm, which means they have to walk through the entire thing because they think that's the best part.
Right.
Inversely, I think a lot of people who have success on small parcels are just literally right on the fringe and using the wind to their advantage and not penetrating the whole farm because it's so small, it's very delicate, and you don't have to be as deep on some of these small parcels in farm country as what you necessarily think. I mean, I shot, I don't know, it might have been 2018. One of the deer I shot, there was one tree I could have hung out of. One. I was in it and I killed a buck out of that one. And if you butt up to something that's way better than what that parcel is too, then you can kind of just ride the wave, good and bad. And those ones are a little bit easier to get access to, so you can have more of them and rotate, filter through, and make the most out of it.
So do you think pressure and access number one priority on a small piece when you're hunting it?
Yeah, I think everything, that's for everything, but for sure on those small parcels, absolutely. And I also notice a lot of these small parcels aren't hot the entire year. So that's where it comes into the historical data of, okay, this field has alfalfa and it's going to be good this time of year, or this field is going to have standing core next to it, so it's going to be good while it's still standing, or all those different variables of it'll probably be good if it's in a good neighborhood at one point. It's not going to be probably good the whole season.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So good question. This is here's an arrow question for you. Micro diameter shaft release date and the 204 versus 246 pros and cons. This is probably a whole podcast in itself, but we'll do the Cliff Notes version for this. Is the guy asking this. I'm also going to frame this so we don't get into Stephen Hawking and start doing a bunch of physics. But for the high level, what is the answers for those? So like micro diameter shaft release date, I can answer that. It's coming here sooner than later. And we're buttoning up a lot of the final things here, and we're really excited to have those available. And we'll announce it here on the podcast and also send out an email. There'll be a limited run, so be sure to keep an eye on that and scoop them up when they come available. But the 204s versus 246 pros and cons, what do you
got? So comparing our shafts, so the MMT versus the NIS. The NIS is going to be the name or the label for the 204 shaft. The 204 shaft is going to have better recovery times because of the material properties that it's being made with. So it'll have slightly better flight characteristics than the 246, than the MMT. So it'll be more efficient with the energy coming from the bow. So it'll be more efficient downrange than the 246 shaft based on the construction. The con to it is it's not going to be as durable. So it's a linear high modulus carbon shaft that's not going to be as durable as the MMT. So those are kind of, essentially those are the pros and cons. Weights are going to be fairly similar. Yeah, pretty similar. For the high level pros and cons, The 204 is going to have slightly better flight characteristics. It's going to recover faster, but it's going to be less durable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we'll have to do a comparison video too when we have them launched of, so people can figure out what would be maybe better for them based off what their goals are of the MMT or the KIS. So
yeah.
Anything else you want to add on? Like I said, I know there's a lot to that. There's a lot of misconceptions that are regarding around that. And I think there's probably a time and place for more in-depth conversation, but anything else you want to add to that?
No, I think that's pretty much it. When we're just a couple weeks away from having that listing go live. I think the labels and everything were just done last Thursday, so we'll have those in our hand, I think, this week. But there's some other things, obviously we have to do before that listing goes live and we start selling them. But when that time comes here in the next couple of weeks, I think that we'll have a full dedicated podcast going through all the specifics of that product.
Yep. And if you're going to be at the Seven Springs Total Archery Challenge or the Michigan Total Archery Challenge, you can come by the booth and look at both of them and put your hands on them as well.
Yep.
All right. So favorite spots to hang cameras, trail scrapes, etc. What's your favorite place?
Scrapes and bedding areas. I think that there's something about having cameras in bedding areas and seeing deer get up and kind of mill around all day. A couple of weeks ago, I hung a camera out on an island in a swamp, and that camera is just transmitting photos of mostly does, but they're 8 o'clock, 10 o'clock in the morning, 1 o'clock in the afternoon, just up milling around, going, doing their thing. I think that there's something to that to see and confirm, like, deer aren't nocturnal, like they're getting up and moving around, browsing, doing different things all throughout the day. And that's kind of cool to see. And then obviously scrapes. I mean, you're the scrape guy, so I'll let you touch on that.
No, I just really enjoy them. And if I could only pick one location a year, it's going to be scrapes for sure. Not just like a field edge scrape, sometimes a field edge scrape, but typically like a community hub scrape by far is the most productive for basically the entire year. The other thing that I really like is kind of those edge transition spaces to where they're coming out of that bedding area and then they're going into food. So you can get an idea of when they're coming back to bed or who's coming back to bed, and then vice versa when they leave, and getting an idea of what's going on there. Or just the really good fence gap or pinch, like the obvious places, but those are all really beneficial. I mean, I just think of all the different places I put cameras. And if you had to ask me, what's the most productive camera on each parcel that is on a really good scrape? I mean, by far, but you can still learn a lot having them elsewhere.
Yeah. I think, depending on what the objective of the camera is, there's a lot of different favorite spots or places to hang cameras, just depending on what you're trying to do. But like, just generally speaking, scrapes and bedding areas, man. Awesome.
Yeah. I'd be curious, anyone else out there, if they have any other unique locations that they really like to put cameras. Obviously we have a luxury of putting cameras in a lot of places and sometimes dumb places just to see what happens to. I like to do that just to see what deer will tolerate and won't tolerate and everything else. So
expand on that a little bit. Give us an example of a dumb place that worked out.
Right off a road, right off a 2-lane highway where it drops off a really big ditch, and you can hear cars drive by in the video. And then you have bucks walking right down the road, and you hear, and they don't care. And so that is the example on small parcels of, you think you have to be further, but you could walk literally 5 yards into the parcel, have your wind blowing into the road, and it's going to go right there. And I just, those really weird spots that are kind of just, think of like the dumbest spot that you think would probably not work. Put a camera there, and I think you might be surprised of what shows up. I'm not telling you to waste your season there, but maybe put a camera there and just see what goes on.
Those are those burner cameras. That's why when we talk about like these big wood scouting missions or scouting anywhere, like always carry that one extra camera in your pack. So if you're, for example, if you're walking into an area and the mission that day is to hang 2 cameras or 1 camera, always carry a spare, because if you only have one, you're always going to search for that best spot.
Yeah, that's an excellent piece of a tip there, because I think just the more eyes you have, the better you can learn, the faster you can learn. And I'm not even talking about trying to kill a specific deer that specific time or whatever else, but just general knowledge. The fact that we can use these tools just to learn and try to apply that to different areas, different things. Why would you not want to learn as much as possible? And so I think that's what cameras can really afford someone to do. All right, next question. Is MRI most recent information from cell cameras in season more valuable than annual data? Man, that is a really hard question. A really hard question.
If I had to pick one, like if gun held to my head, MRI or historical, I would have to say I would lean towards MRI.
And why is that?
Because if you were in my scenario, if you're trying to find a certain caliber of deer and you're only going off of historical information from the previous season, and let's say that historical information in this example ended December 1st, but you knew that deer was in there during the rut, right? That's a pretty kind of a common scenario. Like deer shows up, you have 2 weeks of photos of him or history with him during the rut. Maybe that deer got killed December 3rd and you're banking your entire season on the historical information. So that's why I would lean towards the MRI slightly.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's so. I go back to maybe 3 or 4 seasons ago when I was not using cell cameras, and annual data was paramount to putting together a plan. But
for sure. But
now with cell cameras, it feel a lot more efficient with my time. I think that's what it probably comes down to.
So you would lean towards MRI more than historical information too?
Yeah, I think so. Because a lot of the ones, like I already have the annual data just by running the cell cameras. I already have them on my phone. I already have them saved, and I'm pulling up. Like, let's say it's October 17th. I'm going back to my camera roll from last year and looking at all my saved pictures, and then kind of still doing both. But if they're both important, I'm not gonna give a cop out answer. But I think if I had to choose just one, I think I'd go MRI, just to stay up to date and know what's going on. And yeah, I would be curious what some other people think, but MRI is really key to be effective. And I think it's what the level of effectiveness you can have with real-time information is obviously powerful.
Yeah, the historical information in the annual data will always be super powerful. And if you can combine that with some other general knowledge, like in my scenario, that kind of example I laid out, if you knew what that deer's track looked like or knew what the kind of his signing was, like if he had an inside point that made a certain mark on a rub, like you could still identify that deer and know that he's alive essentially. So, I guess the historical information could be just as powerful as the MRI, as long as you're putting together the other pieces to go along with your trail camera data.
Yeah. If MRI was eliminated, and I say that in terms of cell cameras being eliminated for whatever reason, I would still feel really confident with annual data and going about that approach too. But
100%.
Yeah, it is just pretty cool to know what's going on. And a lot of times, I mean, like this year where I felt like I was in the money most of the time, it was because of cell cameras were in there. And it's like, okay, they're in there, make a move of some sort. And with annual data or with going in pulling standard cards, you do lose just the intrusion of going in and checking them. I know limited a lot of my success in the past. Absolutely. So you eliminate that, it makes a huge difference.
It's hard to, in certain scenarios, it's hard to go in and check a camera and have MRI that's meaningful based off of a standard SD card camera. I can only think of probably 2 or 3 scenarios from standard SD card cameras where we went in, checked a camera, had a photo of a deer the previous night or maybe a day or 2 before that.
That's the thing. Yeah, it's from not that long ago. Yeah.
And then that turned into an encounter because we knew that deer was in the area. Mm-hmm. It's tough.
Yeah. Great question though. So we're kind of on a roll with cameras. Has camera management become an intricate part of your hunting strategy? Yeah, absolutely. I would say It is so powerful just to know what areas has a deer that you want to hunt. I think that's probably the biggest piece of that. Having the ability to decide if you're going to shoot a deer before you see the deer is also huge. And so, okay, I think he's 3. Here's a picture of him last year, or he's 4. And so you can make a decision, a really positive decision, versus a lot of times the knee-jerk reaction is not the right reaction if you had all the facts in front of you. That, I hate to say it, but that's the facts.
Yep.
And just keeping track of everything going, not everything, but keeping a good tab on what's going on from now till they shed antlers. What's your opinion?
Yeah, it's 100%. I think for me, it's actually more important because a lot of the areas that I'm hunting, I can't frequent.
Like scout at night, drive around. Yeah.
Right. It's not out my back door. So, the historical information is a big part of the areas that I plan to hunt. And it's also important to have tabs on multiple areas, because if something changes in that spot or in that area, the habitat changes, the pressure changes, food cover, whatever, like the deer behavior is going to change too. So it's important to have multiple, have cameras in multiple spots and have multiple areas for the upcoming season. I think that's something I probably learned hunting that one specific big deer that we've talked about here, putting all your eggs in one basket. And then if that area changes, it's like, then you have to figure it out on the fly, and you're wasting sacrificing time that could be better spent, in a kill spot or in an ambush spot. So yeah, 100%. I think, obviously it's a big part of what we do.
Yeah.
To your point, finding a deer to hunt, identifying the deer, making it basically a management decision before you actually squeeze the trigger.
Yeah, for sure. And I soak way more cameras than I ever have before too. And I mean, two or 3 weeks ago, I just picked up some cameras that were out the entire year. And one of them was adjacent to a piece that I hunted. And there was a bomber scrape right on the edge. I put a camera up there. There's like one deer that I really wanted to shoot that was there from end of October all the way till the camera died in whatever it was, February or March. And so knowing that for next year, okay, there was one deer that wasn't even there frequently. I'm probably not going to spend, I might still have a camera there, but I'm not going to spend a lot of time there. I'm going to go to the places where hopefully there's a higher opportunity. So I think that's just as much as qualifying an area. It's also just eliminating areas where it might not be worth as much time to spend, because we only have so much. Season goes by so fast. And so you have to be really thoughtful with where you're spending your time.
Yeah. You made a good point about qualifying an area. And I think that sometimes guys go out and put cameras out and they're disappointed when they're not seeing what they want to see on their camera. But essentially that's telling you that, hey, like that's not the spot. Like that's not the area. Or maybe it is, but you need to shift your cameras around or whatever. But there's something to gain in every card pool, whether you're seeing deer or not. It's like it's telling you something. It's your job to figure it out.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Man, we have a lot of the arrow questions when they're coming, so we've already answered that. Reese Johnson asked when I'm going to hunt somewhere besides Illinois.
Come on, Jake.
I put in for Iowa. I put in for Iowa today, so I did this morning. So there's your answer. I'm sitting on 5 points. We'll see.
Reese, I've tried to get Jake to Ohio for what, 7 years? Has it been 7?
You just talk
years?
so positively of it that it excites me so much to go. I never hear anything good about it. It's like, yeah, this kind of sucks. You should come out here. Okay.
There's big deer. I just can't kill them. Maybe you can.
I don't know. Someday we'll find out. It probably won't be this year because I'll be spending as much time in Iowa as I can. Let me ask you this. So you drew a lower, easier unit to draw. Do you regret that decision at all? Or so you would do that again?
No, I don't regret it. No, I don't regret anything about the trip to Iowa. I was
same strategy whenever you can go again. The reason I'm asking this is just because it is such, for whitetail hunters, it is the most coveted tag, period. No questions asked. That's why it's such a big barrier to get into that. So
yes, I wouldn't regret my decision to go back to that unit. It is different. I hunted private last year in Iowa, and it's different I'm trying to think of words to kind of frame this. It's different hunting on a small piece of, I say small, like 150 acres or less, with neighboring properties with pressure around, and you can't just burn through a piece.
Frustrating. Yeah.
And it's like, I found the type of deer I wanted to hunt, but getting at them and getting them killed, it's like you just don't have free reign over kind of every aspect.
Feels like you have kid gloves on. You got your safety gloves on, like
yeah, kinda. So it was just different. I don't regret it at all. In fact, I plan to go do the same thing in 3 years or 4 years. So I bought my preference point this morning. So no, I think I look at it from a volume perspective of just being able to have more opportunities in those types of units or zones versus waiting 6 years or 5 years to go hunt one of the premier zones. That's all.
Yeah. Which originally I had plans of hunting the third year. Oh, you should draw. Didn't draw. You should draw. Didn't draw. So I know I don't have the 100% odds to draw this year too, but I think your strategy makes a lot of sense. But I felt to where it would have been dumb for me to burn that many points on a unit that I didn't need that many points. Granted, I would have been able to hunt last year for sure, but time will tell if it was a good decision or not.
Now, there's going to be point creep in Iowa. Like, it's already started to happen a little bit with some of the COVID stuff. Like, you've been a victim of it, right?
For sure.
And so as we start to have point creep, maybe those lesser units take more points and things start to balance out a little bit. That would change my perspective on it.
I feel like some of those zones are also in relation to the amount of available habitat too. So, I mean, you look at the southern part of the state, there's relative to the rest of the state, there's a lot more habitat. And so obviously there's more tags, more just, naturally more interest from people. So I'd be curious if it did level out, if those like kind of value zones, I'll call them, get less value because there's less opportunity there. And I don't know. I've never hunted there. I'm just thinking from just general facts and putting them together.
The other thing is too, like, everybody is so smitten about drawing an archery tag. Like,
firearm tags, not a bad idea.
Right. Like maybe in the following years, I apply for a firearm tag versus an archery tag. Like, I'm not totally against that either, especially in the late season.
Late season muzzleloader, yeah. Their shotgun season being the first part of December, also part of the reason why Iowa's so great compared to everywhere else in the Midwest too. But that late season muzzleloader tag, if the weather cooperates, I mean, that would be pretty darn sweet.
It's a fairly long season too. I think that comes in like the 20th, around the 20th of December, and goes to what, January something?
I don't know.
I think it's like a 3-week season.
That sounds right. Yeah. 3 weeks sounds about right.
Yeah.
Archery season's real long too, though.
Yeah, it is.
a lot longer to draw it though. A lot longer to draw it. So where are you going this year?
I'm not going anywhere. Well, let me back up.
What do you mean?
I am going elk hunting in September.
What state? What unit? Where at? When?
Yeah. September. Okay. Somewhere west of the Mississippi.
Yeah. Okay. You didn't draw the Kentucky tag then?
No, did not draw the Kentucky tag or the Pennsylvania tag. I'm not going anywhere to whitetail hunt.
Hanging out.
I'm guns a-blazing in Ohio.
Are you gonna travel throughout the state or TBD?
Nope. I'm not traveling through the state. I'm hunting out the back door.
Okay.
And I'm gonna make the best of it.
I think you're gonna be surprised. I'm gonna go on the record right now. I think you're gonna be surprised.
I hope.
Well, you heard it here first. I'm on the record. I'm rooting for you. You're gonna shoot a Northeast Ohio or a Southeast or wherever you live slammer.
Which would be like a 125 here.
It's all relative.
That's right.
It is all relative. Absolutely. Okay. So, this is kind of interesting.
Wait a minute. You can't ask me where I'm going and then ask my plans. You're going to Iowa. Okay.
Yeah. One of the harder places to draw is the plan.
What else? Okay. What else?
Stay tuned. This is called retention. You got to stay tuned. We'll share all the details along the way.
Loose lips, sink ships.
I've been saying that for a long time. But no, I am really excited. Every time I go to Iowa, I don't want to leave. Like living in Illinois and knowing what Illinois used to be, and then just seeing the regression over time in Illinois is really frustrating as an avid hunter. And so there's areas in the state that are excellent, and I'm not discounting that, but I'm talking about like where I grew up, my backyard, to know what used to happen to what it is today has me really excited for Iowa to kind of hop in a time machine. That is my expectation. I'm not expecting to go kill a giant or anything else. I just want to hop in a time machine when it was just a little bit more like how I remember.
So do you have expectations or like goals set out for the trip?
I would like to shoot a mature deer. That's my goal.
Okay.
It's dynamic. I want to shoot a 200-inch deer, of course, but I'm not going to shoot a 200-inch deer more than likely.
You could.
I just want to shoot a mature deer. I want to have a really good time. I'm going to whack some does here in Illinois before I go there and be really laser focused and just soak it all in. 5 years of buildup. I'm going to soak it in.
It'll be the best whitetail trip you've ever experienced.
I believe that. And if I hope we'll see. But no, yeah, mature deer, I'd be more than happy with whatever that looks like. Obviously that goal is going to be dynamic. So
you're going to shoot your first booner.
I hope so. Had to go to
You
Iowa.
heard it here first. You heard it here first.
I'm counting down the days. So yeah, we'll see. This is a pretty interesting thing that we have not covered to my knowledge. And I may be ignorant to this, but any chance of some flat land, big woods content coming, less than 10-foot elevation change, which when I saw that question come through, I was trying to think of what parts of the country that would be applicable to. I'm going, and this is me guessing, like the big woods of Michigan where it's really flat, and maybe down south. I have zero experience with that, but maybe there's a lot of people in that boat that are wanting to know.
Probably some big wood stuff in northern or parts of Wisconsin, probably Minnesota, I would think.
That's flat, you think too? Yeah, probably swampy, more swampy kind of. Yeah.
Yep. I don't have any experience with it, but I'm trying to think of the guy's name. I'm going to butcher this. One of the gentlemen we talked to at Harrisburg in the neighboring booth hunted some big woods type stuff that was relatively flat.
That's got to be really challenging. That type
it's got to be way more harder than stuff that has elevation. You have nothing to really funnel or move deer. It's just like they can wander.
Very unpredictable movement on top. Like any continuous habitat is challenging, and then take out the predictability, there it is, of topography. So yeah, we don't have any of that content right now. maybe we should, but I'm trying to think, what about up by Maine, like Hal Blood? I know he's a big continuous guy. I don't know what the terrain in Maine looks like. I assume that's probably more than 10-foot elevation changes.
Yeah, I was in Maine as a kid, on a long-winded camping trip with the family, and I think it's semi-mountainous up through the Northeast as the Appalachians run kind of through Vermont, New Hampshire, and some of that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Another question, we kind of touched on this, but hunting destinations, reiterate, Illinois and Iowa for me. I did put in for New Mexico this year. For the random draw.
Oh,
yeah.
Nice.
Doesn't seem like a genuine nice. What was that? What do you mean?
Well, how was that not genuine?
Okay. So I hope to draw that. We'll see. 1 in 6 chance.
Yeah, 1 in 6.
If you go with an outfitter, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Without that, I don't know what the odds are. But yeah, so I put in that. My big thing is I'm building up points right now. I did the OTC elk hunt, and I realized I would rather wait and have a better experience and just wait. And I don't know anything about that. So going to someone that I can learn from, I think would be really helpful.
Dude, the invite has been open for a couple of years to join our group.
Yeah. And then most times like, oh yeah, we already applied. When do you guys put in? Oh, we already put in that. Oh, okay. Okay.
December. I think it's December 1st.
Okay. Yep.
To your point though, it can be an unbearable trip and I've learned this from experience over the last 3 or 4 years too. you're better off waiting to draw the right unit or get into a unit that has better population numbers than wander around 300,000 acres of freaking mountains, because it's not going to be an enjoyable trip. I've done both. I've been on both sides of it.
Mm-hmm. What about, do you have 2024 plans inked in? Since this year you're not planning to travel too much?
No, nothing. I don't have anything planned for 2024. I'm in the same boat as you. We've been applying in a bunch of different states, building points. My goal for the next 20 years is to elk hunt every September, for as long as I can. As long as my body will allow me to do it, I want to do it. But I should be able to draw Kansas next year.
That's what I have penciled in for 24 as well.
Yeah, I should be able to draw Kansas.
Yeah. This is from Aaron Heffler. There's a rumor Chad is auditioning for Dancing with the Stars. Can you validate?
Aaron, I'm pretty sure I'm double left-footed, which kind of explains how I ended up with like 2 left-handed kids. I'll go a step further. Have you ever watched the show American Idol? I'm sure you've watched
a long time ago. Yeah.
Right. And you know how they have like the outtakes of like the horrible
that
auditions,
makes like the stars of, yeah.
Like they're terrible.
Yep.
If Dancing with Stars had the same kind of outtakes, I would be on one of those outtakes as a bad dancer. That would be me.
So unfortunately, Aaron, I think we can't validate this. We will not be seeing you on there. Okay, so we haven't talked about this one yet. When will the new Exodus SD card camera be ready? And will we get a sneak peek anytime soon? Well, people at the Harrisburg show did get a sneak peek.
They did, yeah.
I'll let you take it away from here.
No, that project has been a little disappointing. We were hoping to have that camera done and to market in June, but we had some hardware issues with one of our vendors. Actually, the image sensor that we had spec'd out and we're using was discontinued. So we had to respec a new image sensor, which involves rewriting a portion of the firmware. So no, that camera is, I don't have a date for it. I wish I did. I wish it was done and being built right now. But unfortunately, that's just part of the design and manufacturing process. Like you hit hiccups and causes delays. So that's where we are with it.
I will say it's going to be worth the wait. I have full conviction in that. It's going to be a really excellent camera. So if you're someone that's like kind of on the fence, I do think it's worth the wait for a variety of reasons. And you guys will see that as we get closer to give sneak peeks as that person mentioned. So pretty excited for that. Okay. Cost comparison, half years of batteries versus a solar panel. That's a good question. So
say half a year battery,
half a year of running lithium batteries, half a year of running a panel. Cost comparison.
Okay. So on average with a cell camera, in 6 months, you're probably, and it depends, some of the stuff, there's so many variables, signal strength, upload frequency, how many OTA commands you're sending the camera, but just general frame of thoughts here. 6 months of runtime on a cell camera, you're probably going to use 2 sets of lithiums.
So 40 some dollars.
Yeah, I figure $20 couple dollars a pack. And running it on a external power source, an SP18, those are $80. But then power is no longer even a concern when you have that on your camera. I mean, I have a setup in the big woods in Southern Ohio I think it'll be 4 years this summer. I haven't touched it ever. So when you look at running a camera for 6 months, it's going to cost you 40 some dollars. Year 2, you're going to be ahead on that investment. And essentially you can run that camera you can run the camera for multiple years essentially versus 6 months. So
yeah, it is always sweet when you have it set up with a solar panel and you haven't touched it for a super long time and it's just firing away. And so I think if you stretch that out to a year, the break even is a panel. And then I think beyond that is the fact for a lot of guys, let's say it's an hour away or 4 hours away. What's the cost to go there? Your time and the fuel to go there and burn a Saturday or half a Saturday. So I think a panel is a no-brainer. Obviously we sell them, so people are going to think I'm biased, but remove me from this situation. I'm running panels. Absolutely no-brainer.
Yep. I'm in the same boat as you. remove me from Exodus, I would not run a cell camera without an external power source, because once you set it up, you can walk away. The camera's going to be good, and you don't ever have to go back to it. It just doesn't make sense not to.
Yeah. And that decision keeps getting easier with how expensive lithium batteries are getting to. I remember when they were like $13 for 8 of them. Now they're, I don't know how to look. I think I almost bought some on Amazon 2 weeks ago, and I got friction at the cart. I was like, I can't do it. Like, it's just too expensive.
Yeah. I've been, so there's been some Chinese lithium batteries popping up kind of out of the woodwork over the last maybe 4 or 5 months. And I bought some on Amazon to test, and the testing has not gone well.
Same thing. Very unpredictable.
Yes, the discharge rates are very unpredictable. And then you also have to be very aware of what the capacity listings are, because, everyone's so ingrained to using Energizer lithiums, which have a 3 amp hour capacity rating on them. And a lot of these Chinese brands, you're only getting 1.5 amp hours or sometimes 2. So they're not the same. So, for people that aren't running panels, that want to look at other options for lithium batteries, like the one-time use batteries, just make sure that you know what you're buying.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, because I think everyone is feeling the pinch and cost of running batteries. And I think people are like, man, I could save $5. I run however many cameras, and you add it up. But it's one of those deals, unfortunately, you get what you pay for. And I thought the same thing with how many cameras I ran, and I just wanted to try some of them, and I just did not have a good experience. Yeah.
And the other thing is, like, just real quick, black and white example. If you buy a lithium battery that has 1.5 amp hours and it's $1.50 a battery, and you spend $1 more to get 3 amp hours, essentially, like, you're getting twice the capacity or twice the runtime out of that battery. So, like, just simple math, just look at the cost per battery and then the capacity that you're getting.
A question someone's thinking right now probably is, okay, if I have a solar panel, do I have to run batteries at all?
You don't have to, technically. It is not a requirement. The camera will pull from at least our cameras will pull from the external power source as the primary source of power. But having some type of internal batteries in the camera works as a backup. So if the panel for some reason malfunctions or dies or comes unplugged or whatever the case is, the camera's not lost. It's still going to operate. It's going to switch to the internal power source. That makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. And reason I asked, I know someone's thinking that right now. So I personally haven't I've always had batteries in them, but I know there's some guys that do that. And just another thing is, like, if a raccoon pulls batteries out, you have no insurance policy, or pulls out the cord.
Yep.
You have no insurance policy. Okay. This is a situational question here. A buck being all over cameras 1 year and then disappearing, following the following year and showing back up is how they're asking that. So I'm taking that as, let's say 2021, you had a buck all over all the time. And then 2022, so the following year, he did show up eventually. I think that comes down to the annual data, to where to see when did he show up the year before and when did he come back and when did he disappear. I've seen that happen on the biggest deer I ever had the opportunity to hunt, and, like, not there in the summer, would show up around the 10th or 11th. I think the year after, it was a couple days after. Not to say he wasn't in the area, I didn't get pictures of him, but there for like 5, 6, 7 days, gone. And so that's where the annual data comes into. And I think the other thing to consider is maybe the age class of the deer too. Maybe he was a 2 or 3 year old and he hung out a lot, and then he relocated with social pressure. You want to get a little bit more secluded, but still came back to area that he was familiar with. Have you seen that?
I don't have a bunch of experience with finding a deer and hunting a deer and then that deer basically disappearing for a year and then coming back. We've had a scenario, this would be back in 2015 when Matt was hunting that big typical 6x6.
Mm-hmm.
And there was another big deer running with him. And we thought that they had kind of disappeared. But it was just a matter of they had shifted a little bit. And then once we figured that out, I mean, we picked them back up again. And I think that maybe that's why we don't have as much experience with that. Like if I have a deer in a certain area,
you can put cameras out far enough to free find them.
I just cast a wider net if he's not showing up. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I've seen that happen a handful of times for sure. Or like when a deer starts to show up late October, or you have him in velvet a couple times, more than likely he will be back during the season. I'm not saying he's going to be there in daylight all the time, but he should be back. I've seen that happen a lot over the years.
Yeah. And the other thing too is, don't get so complacent and reliant on your cameras and think that just because you didn't get a picture that the deer's not there. And that example that I gave with, those deer shifting a little bit back in 2015, like that was we were becoming too complacent with what we were getting with our trail cameras. And the deer were, man, if you would just shift a quarter mile one way, like they were right there. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I think that sometimes as much as we tell folks that, cameras are a powerful tool and they're so important to your scouting and so important to your hunting, sometimes people can get complacent with them and rely on them too much.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it's a double-edged sword for sure. But I would say for that gentleman, go back and start looking at the dates. And maybe it was a crop rotation thing too. I mean, that's another thing to consider. If it was corn that year and he was living in a ditch, year after it was beans, that's probably why he wasn't there. So there's so many different variables that go into that. So I would just say, look at it very objectively, and you may come up with an answer, or at least a starting point, or rule some stuff out too. Okay, next piece here. Most valuable piece of information you have learned from running a lot of cameras over the last 7 years.
I would say it's historical information that deer, confirming that deer do the same thing, year to year, assuming that, pressure and habitat, food, those things aren't changing. Like deer will show back up when you think that they're not there. Yeah. I would say that's the biggest thing that I've confirmed or learned. I mean, Don talked about that probably a decade ago, and
now it's secondhand. Like it's just nature. People are like, oh yeah, you didn't know that, which is kind of cool to see that idea and concept get adopted fully. Cause I think people kind of thought it was BS, and now it's just common knowledge almost.
Yep. I would say that's the biggest thing that I've learned over the last 7 or 8 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I would say just the power of scrapes for sure has been really informative to me, of just how deer behave, and all the information you get from running video on them is something that I don't know if I would have discovered if, didn't have a bunch of cameras around on video mode. And so I think that's probably a really big one. And then the historical data for sure. And then one of the deer I really wanted to kill this year, banking on historical imagery. Like this was the scrape he hit the year before. He did not do that this year for whatever reason. Still alive, got him at the end of the season, everything else. But that's what makes some of those like really challenging deer to kill, is because you think you have a plan. He's there early October. You think, okay, I'm going to stay out of there and I'm going to try to make a move. And then that was one of the other cameras I had soaking for the entire season. I went and pulled it. So a camera that I had him on for basically the entire season, I did not have him on that camera. It's a really predictive pinch. Did not have him on camera until muzzleloader season in Illinois. Meanwhile, I had like the year before, I had him in velvet in there, had him in October, had him way off, and I think I hunted that farm twice. So I just completely stayed out of there. And then sure enough, he was in there, way later. So the only thing I can think of is, once again, it was corn the year before, it was beans this year. Maybe he was bedding on a pinch, like on one of the fingers out. And then with it being beans, he just didn't bed there this year. And he still rutted through. He was on a doe that day too, in the middle of the night. So you can just draw a lot of information. That's like the easiest way to say it. I don't know if it's necessarily like one key thing. It's just a culmination of all of the data that you can pull, and then asking yourself objectively what's going on, and not trying to convince yourself of things that probably aren't reality. I kind of wrote off that deer. Like, I'm probably not going to kill that deer. I'm not going to spend a bunch of time on there. And I think I could have wasted a whole season in there, because he just didn't spend that much time on there. But the year before, he did spend more time.
Let me ask you this. Do you draw better conclusions in the heat of the moment, like when you're getting, whether you pull a card or get a photo sent to your phone or whatever the case is, do you draw better conclusions when you're first looking at that information, or when it's not top of mind and you're like reflecting on the season? Like, where do you draw more conclusions or more information?
I think later on, I think you can make a snap reaction and think but then the funny thing with that particular story is I found out that that particular deer was on a doe and the neighbor shot the doe during muzzleloader season. And he shot the doe and he got down out of his stand. He went to go recover the doe and that buck was right behind him. Okay. So, all right, that changes the situation quite a bit. I would have never known that through the season, but I found out afterwards. So I think you just typically, if you keep your ears open, you will slowly kind of figure out some of these things of like, oh, that is why, or you figure out all these different things that start to make a little bit more sense. But the other side of that is I was predicting when that deer should show up. He never did. So that would be a situation. If he did show up, then I was going to put a move on him. And that would be a scenario of like, okay, I already thought of this. Now he's here. Now I'm going to do that. But yeah, I think with real-time data, though, you can draw a lot of conclusions. Like there's 100% a hot doe in the area, or this place is dead. So I think, yeah, I think it's situational, but for sure, the more facts you have, the more things make sense. Next question, best trail camera height for a balance of picture and quality and concealment. That's
good question. I feel like we talk about this, or we have talked about this in the past. And, you know, a lot of guys want to run their cameras, guys on public at least, want to run their cameras 10, 12, 14 feet up in the air. And I get it. Like, you don't want your camera to walk away, but you're really kind of hindering the ability of the camera to do its job. Number one, you're creating voids in the detection zone of that camera. So the camera is going to be more of a static set than a dynamic set, depending on what you're monitoring there. But you're essentially focused in on one spot versus letting or optimizing the detection zone or area of that camera. So that's one thing. Two, when you get your cameras up that high, it is harder to judge deer. Like it's the photo angle thing, right? Like if you take a photo of something kind of the camera lower shooting up, things look bigger. When you're on top facing down, things kind of look smaller. So I think, in my opinion, the best balance of height for photo quality and concealment is like that 6 to 8 foot mark. Like, you know, you're out of the line of sight of the animal. It's just above the line of sight of most people. So you still have that kind of anti-theft concealment scenario going on. And then you're not, the photos are better, you know, you're able to judge deer by their body, not just their antlers. And you just have a little more accurate information of what the photo is representing of the animal, in my opinion.
Yeah, for sure. The 6 to 8 feet for sure is, I think, the sweet spot. Or the multi-trunk situation where you kind of tuck the camera back and you can get away with having that a little bit lower, I think. And like midsection high, I think you can get some of the coolest videos. But as to your point, like all the points you mentioned, like 6 to 8 feet is definitely a little higher. This is another thing that I guess in terms of the last question we had too. The Lift 2 on video mode makes deer look bigger. No doubt about it, in my opinion, from a lot of different situations. And on a render or a cell camera, deer look smaller. I will take that to the bank. It's like the Lift 2, take anywhere between 6 to 10 inches off of what you think he's going to be. And then with the render, I would say add 3 to 5, maybe 6. And that's a lot of hard data of deer that were on the hoof, and you have an idea what they are, and then you hear what they score. And then the other way around, it's like, whoa, I was off. So that would be another thing that just to consider. And maybe I'm a poor judge of guessing too. So, but that is the theme that I've noticed.
No, I would agree. I would agree with that. 100%. Cell cameras, you know, you're getting those compressed, tiny little thumbnails. It could definitely make deer look smaller. I've noticed that too. Yeah,
versus taking the Lift 2 video, putting it on your big computer or your TV, and you're looking at it, and you get a much better look. But that's something else to consider. All right, this is probably a tougher one to answer. Let's hear your wildest day in the woods. Does not have to pertain to deer.
Jeez, oh man. Wild. I don't know. I've had somebody, I like going in to hunt a world-class animal, have somebody mess with my truck, like 25 minutes after. Like that was pretty frustrating. I wouldn't necessarily say it's wild. Something wild, I guess, would have to be last year in Idaho, like driving 10 miles on a dirt bike, hiking in 4 miles to locate animals, and then following those animals 8 miles back to their, or I guess it would be 5 miles back to their bedding area before killing one in a thunderstorm. At one point I had stripped down into my underwear, lightning, hail. That was pretty wild.
That is pretty wild. And then you seal the deal on it to make it all more fruitful. Here in farm country, things don't get too wild. So I would say one story that's kind of this unique. We used to have a parcel that we could hunt, and the landowner said he only muzzleloader hunted. And so I think it was first or second shotgun season. I was probably like a freshman or sophomore in college. So I roll in, I'm going to hunt, and I'm going to a blind. And the landowner, I see someone in there, I'm like, what the heck? And then I get up there, and it's the landowner. And as I'm looking there, I'm like, something smells like crap. Like what? Like what? And I'm like sniffing, and like I'm getting like to the base of the tree here, and it's the guy comes out. He's like, "Oh, you're hunting here tonight?" And I'm like, "Yeah." So I didn't think you'd be out. And he's like, "Yeah, I just decided to come out here tonight." And I was like, "Okay." And then he's like, "I want you to hunt here. I want you to hunt here." And I looked down, and the landlord took an actual crap at the base of the tree. And I'm like, "No, dude, it's fine. I'll go somewhere else." He's like, "Damn it, I want you to hunt here." And I'm like, "No, I'm good. Like, I'm really okay. Like, there's other places I can go. It's early enough." And so go ahead.
He was in the stand. He crapped below his own stand.
Yes. My guess is he probably got there and he's like, "Oh, I got to take a crap." And then he did. And so I went there and sat, and I was like, what was I supposed to say? Like, no, as he's like demanding me to hunt there. And so I hunted there and I didn't see a darn thing. So that was one of those key things. Like, I don't care, but I have to go get permission somewhere else and do my own thing and just break away. And that was one of those kind of like breaking moments of just like, this is a total waste of time. And I don't want to be disrespectful, but this is a total waste of time. And it was a total waste of time. So that's about as wild as it gets. Yeah.
That's funny.
Just the, like, you get a whiff of it and you're like, what in the world is that? And then you look down and you see toilet paper and you're like, oh my gosh. So that was kind of strange. What are some optimal settings on the rival camera for high quality photos, low data consumption?
High quality and low consumption. The rival's a little bit different, where it has adjustable compression software to allow the user to pick what is more important. So you can go ultra low quality. I don't want to say ultra low, but you can go low quality,
really compressed.
So the thumbnails are smaller. You get more photos for the data, or you can flip that and get a bigger image sent to you with lower compression, but it's going to consume more data. I think for me personally, I like to run my cameras on the higher compression that transmit the smaller files, because we don't charge people for HD downloads and have an OTA request. So if there is an image that I want to receive in better quality, then I just request the HD photo. So to me, it's the best of both worlds. Get your photos transmitted at a higher compression rate, so they're smaller files. You get more for your data, and then if you want, an individual picture to be full resolution, you could just request it through the app.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And the Rival HD images are really impressive for anyone that hasn't used them.
They're
really
good.
Great. They're really good pictures, and they're been thoroughly impressed with those. So yeah, I would agree. That's a great way to manage data and also get really good pictures through those. But yeah, there's a lot of different options there. That's something that wasn't available in the render, and so you can definitely take advantage of that. And the Rivals, man, we've sold a bunch of them, and the feedback has been excellent. And I still feel that dollar for dollar, it's the best cell camera out there.
I think that camera is going to end up being our number one, like, all-time bestseller.
I would agree.
Like, when we look at the volume over the last handful of months. We launched that in what, January or February?
January. Martin Luther King Day.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's going to be the all-time bestseller. I think it's on track to outpace the renders, outpace the Treks, the Lift 2s, the Lift 1s. It's a really, really good camera. And it's really simple to use. And I think, like, when you look at the performance and it's easy to use, I think it kind of struck a chord with a lot of people.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, something that a lot of people requested, and we delivered it. And it's always good that the people that requested it ended up buying it. So that's always, I mean, that's really cool to see that go full circle. So been really happy with those. Byron asked when I'm going to come hunt the big woods. Another, see, if you guys made the big woods sound just slightly more fun, it'd be maybe, I don't know. I don't know what it is, but it's like a badge of honor that it sucks.
I think it's a little bit. Yeah. It doesn't suck. It's definitely more work. Right. But I think like with more work, there's more, I don't know, personal satisfaction. Maybe it's just us because we're twisted like with this.
Yeah. I mean, I look at it different. I work really hard professionally, so I have places to go here. And so I don't think it's I mean, I think it's just different strokes for different folks. I do think it would be fun to go give it a shot. I don't know when that is, but we'll see. Pencil me in for a year that starts with the 2 and ends with another digit.
Well, I could say, I think your first big woods experience should not come in Ohio. Like with the EHD and like all the stuff that's happened here in Ohio the last 2 years. The crossbow kills. I mean, last year was a record harvest.
Which that trend's not going to change.
No, as far as deer numbers, and then you have the HT thing. I think Ohio has seen, like you mentioned, the glory days of Illinois and how it's regressed. I think Ohio is coming off of the glory days, and we're going to see some regression in the next handful of years. In my opinion, could be wrong. Hopefully I'm wrong.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say with the kill off from last summer, and then everything else kind of going against it. But I'm sure there's still going to be some stompers running around down there, but
for sure,
it's a lower density, and so hard to say. But yeah, what's the productivity tip to maximize the day?
Byron, I think I don't know. Everybody has their own kind of personality, and it's going to be different for everybody, right? But for me, there's really 2 things. One is getting a jump start on the day, getting up relatively early, getting a workout in. Like that sets the mental tone for me for the day. Like I wake up, get a workout in, and I automatically have like that little chip on my shoulder. Like, let's go. Let's get after it.
Changes the tone for sure. Yeah,
it does. And then, I'm not a big multitasker. I've tried that in the past, like having 7, 8 things go on. And it's like, I end up with 10 projects started and I don't get anything done. Everything's half done. So for me, I like to make a list. I like to prioritize what needs done and then accomplish those things one at a time. And, going back to like individual personality traits, like I get a little hard on when I like get to cross something off a list or make a little check mark next to it.
It's a level of satisfaction. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. No, I think that's fair. I would say I would echo most of that. And I would say another thing too, is like building out the team that we have is the guys that we have do their task, and it makes everyone's jobs easier when everyone does their job and executes what they're supposed to. So I think that's something that has gotten easier over time to wear a bunch of hats. And then now you're wearing just different, more focused hats and letting people do what they need to do and let them do it well.
Let me ask you this. Are you getting, now that because like back in the day, there was 2 or 3 of us, right? And it was just like nonstop work from, there were no hours. I mean, you just worked. Do you find yourself, and maybe this is a bad question for you, because I know you have like other things going on, but I kind of find myself, I don't want to say bored. Bored's probably not the right word. I guess bored's maybe is the right word, but I find myself like not as busy and not like, doesn't feel like I'm doing as much as I was doing like 5 or 6 years ago. Do you like have a similar?
I think that's a natural thing to feel. Now I'm still pretty darn busy and I don't really know what hours mean. Like that's probably to the level of diminishing returns, but no, I still feel like it's just a higher RPM. A lot of times I still feel like whether whatever's getting filled in, maybe it's not all 100% operations at Exodus, but like I still run at a pretty high RPM. But there are times where you look back and it's like, I remember when like we have this personnel, and I remember that was one person, and then that person had all those other things on top of that. And how did that even happen? And obviously, that's kind of unique to see. But yeah, I think it's just different going from working to like being in the trenches and like this output of like these are these different things, and now it's like more high level. Like this is where we need to go. This is what we need to do. This is who we need to talk to. And so, yeah, I mean, I think that's just some general natural growth, but it's
good for business. Fantastic for the business.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, I think there's some times where I do think it's like, holy cow, like all the stuff that with the small team that we had of all the stuff that we got done and did is pretty crazy. And then you look back sometimes like, what did it like? If there was someone looking over my shoulder of like, all right, give us your deliverables for the day. All right, well, here's this email, this call. It's like, you want to hear the transcription from it? Because yeah, just definitely roles change over time. Which we're getting ready to announce 8-year anniversary sale, and we'll have a dedicated episode about that. But anything you want to echo or share? 8 years of Exodus. You've been a day one guy.
There's days where, man, it feels like I've been doing this my whole life, and it feels like an eternity, honestly. And then there's other days it feels like we just started this thing yesterday. Mm-hmm. So no, I'm just glad that we kind of dove in head first. Of course, there's a crap ton of things I would do different, but the long and short of it is like all the mistakes that we made had some integral part of us learning something to do it right to get us to the place that we're at. So, a lot of people go back and have regrets about those mistakes. And my perspective on it is I think that I look at those mistakes and have a little bit of gratitude for them, because I think they were an important part of us getting to where we are.
Sure. I think that's fair. Yeah. You're not failing. You're not growing. I mean, that's just the really simple, crude way to say it. So, everyone would love a mulligan every now and then though. So, but that's just the way it goes. But, anything else here as we wrap it up?
Nope. I don't have anything on my end. I think, in the coming weeks, we're going to have quite a few of these, I believe, with the 204 stuff, the anniversary sale. There should be a handful of more internal episodes popping as long as I get the invite back.
It's a standing invite. It's tough to get you on here. Yeah, it's certainly, I've made that clear.
Okay.
I've made that crystal clear in my mind, but maybe I need to work on my communication. Yeah, you're welcome anytime. And I would say for anyone listening here, if there's any guest you would like us to try to hunt down and get on here, or any past guests you'd want to hear again, any topics you want to hear, we are all ears and happy to accommodate to the guys that listen to it, because if no one listens to it, then it's just two guys talking, and we got other stuff to do. So yeah, I appreciate everyone that submitted a question, and always open lines of communication. And check out the Osseo and Exodus giveaway. We're giving away $750 gift card for Exodus, a $750 gift card for Osseo. We're announcing that May 19th at 8 a.m. Central Standard Time. And so pretty darn easy way to win $1,500 or have a chance to do it. Just go to the description below and put in your email, and we'll send you whether you won or you didn't win. And keep an eye out for other emails about the new arrows, the anniversary sale, everything else that we have coming down. We have, for the rest of the year, we really have a lot of stuff kind of booked out. And I feel like we're finally over the hump of just the boring time of year to be in the outdoor space. And I say that relative of how I enjoyed the springtime, but I also enjoy the rest of the year more than what we saw here the last couple of months.
Yeah, 100%. And there's a product, actually there's a couple new products.
Yeah.
That will hit the site that we haven't really talked about. Maybe we'll talk about those in a couple upcoming episodes.
Yeah, really exciting stuff. So, all right, guys, I appreciate it.